In a world where Africans have lost their roots, it has become of vital importance to document our ways. In an effort to reverse the brainwashing of the past, where we were made to believe our ways are demonic, we are pressed to create dignified and respectful platforms to unpack our spiritual ways. Moya, O light, O Moya, O bright. Welcome to another episode of Moya Political Series. Usually we have a panel discussion for these series. However, you guys have kept insisting that I bring back this woman on her own, and you keep insisting alone. So I've done that for you guys. Phaphano is here joining us today on Moya Political Series. We're going to unpack what's happening on the political landscape, what's happening with the voting, education, what's happening, Jay, on, Lamzansi. Phaphano, thank you once again for honoring the invitation and coming to join us again on Moya.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. And big up to the viewers.
So, as I'm saying, you were very popular. Obviously, we want to draw from your knowledge. I want us to first, before we get to where we are now, the economy and the politics of this country are so woven together. I was listening to your podcast when you were speaking about the history about Renwick and whatever. So can you take us back so that we understand what it means when we say we want the economy and what are we saying?
Well, again, what is the economy? I think for me that is, when we speak of the economy, what is really the South African economy? And, yesterday I was having this conversation with this professor, and our conversation centered around this dual economy in South Africa. The fact that, and we were just discussing this now, the very fact that around 6.7 million workers in South Africa earn less than 3,500. That is your economy, literally, in South Africa. Because if you take that into context, it also means that if you take this number, then you've got 7.1 million South Africans who are paying taxes. And then of the 7.1 million South Africans who are paying taxes, only 3 million pay 90%, which go towards total income tax. This means that your economy is so skewed, it favors the elite. That's what your economy literally means. But then it also means that, or you have to also take into context that you've got around 28 million South Africans who are on social grants, including the social relief grant. 28 million South Africans who are on welfare. And what does this welfare mean? It means that your ordinary, South Africans who are mainly black in the majority, they are living below the poverty line. They get around 350, your 500 from government. And when they get this money monthly, it mainly goes into retail companies. It mainly goes back to retail companies. So you get your 350, you go to ShopRite. Okay, in fact, you go to ShopRite, you get your 350, then you buy the basic necessities. I mean, how much is the price of bread, oil, and so on? So that money goes back to corporates. So that is literally your economy. The rich are actually having it lucky, meaning that in the main, this is what it means. It means that white people are doing fairly well in the ANC-led economy. And perhaps one might not necessarily blame the ANC, because what they might be thinking is that in order to legitimize themselves, because, there must be a reason why you vote for the ANC, and because their primary constituency is the poor black majority, then they have to speak of the social grants. Hence, January 8th, when the president of the ANC was speaking, President Ramaphosa, he proudly said that we've got 28 million South Africans on social grants. So that is your economy. There's literally no economy. to be honest. It means that post-94, the ANC was not able to transfer the necessary skills. And some of these problems are not necessarily your Ramaphosa problems. These are structural problems because your Jacob Zuma and Ramaphosa inherited structures, for example, not even structures, they inherited an economy where you had your education, if you can put it like that, or skill centers as well. They were closed down by President Thabo Mbeki. So what you had during apartheid, which was a balance between theory and practice, because that's what the apartheid government did well. It was taken away. So you literally...
What do you mean?
Well, the apartheid government did not only focus on formal schooling. You did not have to be good in mathematics or good in science to excel. In primary school, you could do agriculture, you could do sewing, you could cook. And that gave you a skill so that you can be self-sufficient and self-efficient. So that's what happened during the apartheid system. Hence, some people called it a socialist-orientated system with all its, evil, However, they were pragmatic in approach because they knew that as human beings are inherently different in Ziki. You can't take all children to school, and it's happening with the ANC. There's no country in this continent which spends money on education than the ANC, but what have been the outcomes? So the ANC has created what I deem to be human waste because they spend money on this education system, but there's no return on investment. So the very learners who come out of the ANC education system, they become social grant earners. So that is the reality of your South Africa today, which is quite unfortunate.
How would we be able to change it? What kind of a system are we looking to work towards? That how do we fix? What is required?
I think what is required is pragmatism. In the tripartite alliance of the ANC, they like to speak about, or they like to quote the National Democratic Revolution. They go to China. Then you have the Communist Party and so forth. But the Chinese Communist Party is very pragmatic. I mean, the father of modern China, as it's called, after the leadership of Chairman Mao, who took over from Chairman Mao, and that is Deng Xiaoping. One of the things that he said is that it doesn't matter the color of the cat as long as it knows how to catch the mouse. And what he was saying was that be it capitalism, be it socialism, as long as it can change the lives of the people. So I think that's what we need to be honest with in relation to our conversation. But what the Chinese have done is that they speak of socialism with Chinese characteristics. So it's not really socialism. It's something. They can't call it capitalism, but they call it socialism because of the role of the state. So the state is responsible for many of the institutions, or what we call state-owned entities that must change the lives of the people, that must develop the country. So the state is responsible for that. But they are also capitalist in orientation. But also, China was also, if you look at the history of China, for some of us who have been to China, but also we always applaud it for being able to take more than 800 million Chinese out of poverty. Some of the things that we need to also accept is that there was a time when the Chinese government and the American government agreed that China will manufacture and America will consume. That's why you had Chinese sweatshops. So China had to start somewhere. And unions were banned at the time. And it's no different, for example, to the US, because the development of China is also based on depoliticizing unionism, meaning that you also have to take the price of labor into consideration. So that is what China had to deal with. But at the same time, the Chinese were obviously future orientated.
Yes.
Yeah. The education system. So, I mean, if you go back and you look at China, they did not really reinvent anything. They went to Japan. Because remember, also if you take Japan, because we've got so many examples, we have so many countries that we can look at in terms of their developmental path. Because some of these countries were far worse than South Africa. Far worse because they had no infrastructure. Take Japan, for example. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Japan went to war. In fact, literally a nuclear bomb, 2 atomic bombs. Yes, there were 2 atomic bombs that were dropped in Japan. And Japan had to recover from that. They had to recover from that. And today, Japan is one of the fastest growing economies. It's in the top 5 of the biggest economies in the world. That is a country that went to war with the US, with Great Britain, and Russia. But they had to change their orientation. And Japan today is, as I'm saying, technologically China. As I'm saying, Deng Xiaoping had to go to Japan to study how Japan had advanced. And then you also take Singapore. Examples, they are so vast, but it's the same story. You have to take Singapore. You have to take India. So the stories are nearly the same. It was education, it was pragmatism, but I think also more importantly, it's human capital, which this country is no different to Scandinavian countries. When a child is born, they see that child as an asset. And the responsibility of the state is to ensure that they groom this child to play a developmental agenda in the future of that country. So that's what happens. In South Africa and the continent, it's completely different. And, when we speak, and Siki, for example, when you ask me that question, we also have a dual education system. The children of the rich go to the best schools. So they've got quality education. The children of the poor, they are subjected to the education system, which is considered one of the lowest, especially in relation to literacy, mathematics, and so on. And many of us are okay with this dual system. We are okay to stay in the suburbs. We are okay that our kids are, they are not subjected to this mediocrity. And then we ask questions. We are, when these learners, because remember, the 12 years, 14 years that they spend, they have to transition. And the majority of them, whether they go to higher educating institutions of higher education, they get stuck. They can't read, and many of them drop off. And those who don't drop off, they are unemployed, they are unemployable. So the system is totally broken, Nziki. And the unfortunate reality is that we've got political parties who have never said anything about solving this problem. So I think for me that is the major issue. And we've never ever had some economic codesa. You can call it a codesa, you can call it what you want. We've never had a space where all of these political parties have not come to us and said, this is where South Africa is at the moment. What needs to happen? Because even the very middle class, which is taking their children to these private schools, they're struggling. Look at the number of the middle class today. Our government is speaking of NHI. Who's going to fund it? When you have 3 million taxpayers who are the ones who are contributing to 90% of the total income tax. So it's just a facade. This is what we are faced with. And when one says all these things, one is not necessarily attacking the governing party. these are realities that South Africans are subjected to. I mean, you look at the numbers, and I always check the numbers that come from the very banks. The closures, home closures, people cannot afford to pay their cars. People cannot obviously afford to pay their homes. There was a report that just came out recently that says that South Africa has the highest number of mental, rate challenges or issues. So this is a country that we are faced with. So if politics could solve the problems of the people, we could be dealing with all these issues, because we've got people who can solve these problems. We've got professionals, we've got business people, we've got academics who can help, to shape our country into a direction where the youth have got a chance, where old people can retire with dignity, where married people do not have to fight over finances. We could have such a country if political parties can go back to the people to seek a mandate. It has not happened.
When I was asking you earlier on about the history of the economy, because this speaks exactly to it. When us black people who go to school with the white kids who are rich, when we're older now, the white kids are equipped and there's resources for them to start their businesses, and then we are back to being black because we don't have those resources unless we suck up to the white people. So can you give us how we get to that? Because is it not completely tied up to body land issues, the Land Act, and how the economy was transferred into white hands and has not been transferred back?
The issue of the land. I was having this very conversation with the spokesperson of the Black Hebrew Society that is based in Israel. And I asked the very question, because in many instances, I require spiritual guidance because we are a very spiritually deficit nation and race. And I asked Tsar, I said, Tsar, do you think the question of land, we are ready as the African majority in South Africa to start talking about the land question? Which is a historical question, by the way, which is a necessary question because land was taken forcefully. And I said, what will you do with the land? And I've had this question before. And in my mind, clearly land is an asset. Land is, you can do anything with land, Nziki.
Land is the economy.
Yes. We can plant. The economy, Nziki, that you speak of, the post-apartheid economy, the post-colonial economy, it was also a facade. Because if you look at that economy, and I will get to what you're saying, because we are saying, how do we get to a point where Africans in South Africa own the value chain of the economy and are able to participate in the mainstream economy? We are saying that also, not taking into consideration that, unlike whites, we have ethics, we have laws that we have to abide by in order for us to operate in what is called an ethical environment. But whites were not subjected to all these laws. So you've got the Oppenheimers. In fact, you've got all these corporations. You take your Glencore. Glencore is one of the most corrupt companies in the world. It's not a new thing. They used to sell arms illegally. They used to be involved in illegal minings, illegal wars, and so forth. That's how these people made money. If you look at how mining became the epicenter of the South African economy, men from Malawi, men from Botswana, men from Southern Africa. They were used as cheap labor. When they were brought into South Africa, they could stay here for more than 2 years without even going back home. So the women in those countries were left without partners. There were no fathers. The fathers were taken to South Africa so that they can build what we call this developed economy that we are proud of. I mean, I was looking at this. I was reading different articles yesterday about the migrant economy, and I was just shocked at the numbers, at the number of Malawians that were in South Africa, way back from the 18th century. I mean, the very fact that the first black person to head a trade union in South Africa was Malawian in South Africa. So the precursor to COSATU, it was led by Clemens Kadali from Malawi. So when we speak of these rights that we have as workers, especially those of us who are skilled, because remember, people who are semi-skilled or unskilled, they don't have the right. They don't have the rights whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you look at the South African economy, but also including the Hlubi men, the men from the Eastern Cape, the men from Lesotho, these are the men who were literally cheap labor. So if you look at all of this, my assessment is that South Africa is literally a plantation for cheap labor. That's why we cannot close the borders. The hospitality industry, the mining industry, the agriculture industry, and different industry, they rely on cheap labor from Zimbabwe. And for many of us, when we say they must go, mabahambe, they did not come here because they wanted to. Yes, they did not come here because they wanted to. To the extent that in the 60s, Rhodesia, as it was called, was fighting for cheap labor from Malawi. But today, Zimbabweans are coming here to work in the hospitality industry, where they do not have rights. They do not have rights. They can be fired at any given time. They do not earn minimum wages. The majority of them rely on tips. And many of them, with this little money that they're earning, they take it back home. So that is the reality of this economy, which is no different, by the way, to the apartheid economy, because our economy as well, it relies on cheap, exploited labor. So now we are here and we are asking what needs to be done. But then again, when we ask what needs to be done, we ask from a perspective of material or materialism. Because our notion of development is the car that you drive. It's where you live. It's what you wear. BBL, the hair, which is another topic. So that is our outlook on a black economy in South Africa. We don't speak about, for example, if you speak about the agricultural sector, we're not speaking about organic food. We're not speaking to the reality that the food that is produced in South Africa is killing us. And the people who are making money from our sickness is the pharmaceutical companies. And after we die, it's the insurance companies that make the money. So it's just, and who are these people? It's a sector that is owned by white people, far away from us. So these are, I think, honest discussions that we need to have, because the other thing is, we are also, look at the number of people who drink alcohol, the majority of us. And the reality is that we cannot survive. Some of us cannot survive in a sober South Africa. Who makes money out of that? Johan Rupert. So that's the sad indictment. And we cannot participate. We cannot harm people because all these people, the mining industry makes money out of harm. The men who work the mines. Now they're bringing in new technologies, but the majority of the men, some of them have gone back to the Eastern Cape sick. Some of them died in, Rustenburg, Marikana, and others. What were they dying for? We cannot participate in those industries. Yet, who owns those minerals? Those minerals belong to us. Mother Nature bequeathed those minerals to us. Yet government says what is below the ground, it belongs to them. But who is them? It is them and the corporations. It is them and the Oppenheimers. So unfortunately, as I said, this might require that we actually have a sit down to say, we don't want to harm white people. I mean, you've got generations of white people who've been here, and there are some who want to make this country work. But the reality is that many of them are also ignorant to the fact that they can still vote for a racist, myopic party like the Democratic Alliance simply because that party protects so-called white interest. When it's not even white interest, because white people are also subjected to this economy. And it's an oligopoly. It's a monopolistic economy which affects all of us. But then you'll have the DA which is saying, vote for us, will protect your interest. And white people fall for that. And white people in South Africa, they've always been the most ignorant race. That is why there was colonialism. They said nothing and they benefited from the very colonialism. And in fact, many of the white ancestors were slave owners. And by the way, Nziki, most of the South African slave owners also got reparations. So you've got that part. White people or the white elite during colonialism was able to convince the white majority or minority, as you call it, but the white people who were here, the white majority were in South Africa, that they must exploit, oppress, kill, torture, rape us because of the color of our skin and because of the survival question. White people allowed that to happen. And then you had apartheid. It is also white people who voted for the apartheid government, even before the apartheid system kicked in. White people agreed to the terms and conditions which relegated black people to servitude. And you have someone like Helen Zille who says, we gave you or we civilized you. What type of civilization kills, tortures, dehumanizes? Is that civilization? Because of these big skyscrapers, you civilized us? No, but that is your South Africa today. That's why white people disrespect us. But they forget that white privilege, it was born out of black servitude. So that is what you have. And those are not the conversation that we are having. We've not had a conversation with the Oppenheimer family, which is funding all the political parties. You must bring Musimayimani here. You must bring Songezo Zibi here. You must bring Herman Mashaba. You must bring all these people who are funded by the Oppenheimers, who are funded by Open Society, who are funded by Michael Leroux, who owns Capitec, using black people's money to fund political parties which will protect white interest, not prosperity for all. Their interest. You must bring all these people here to your studio so that they can explain to South Africans whose interest are you representing and why are these people only funding you? Because they're not funding anyone else. They've moved away from the African National Congress because they know that within the ANC there are radicals who are still prepared to fight for the soul of the ANC. They know that. So the ANC, they don't have an appetite for the ANC now. That's why they're bringing all these other black parties, because they understand that we are a majority. So our vote is highly contested. But because we have been miseducated, we are going to vote for the very people. So all these families who control our country, they came to a conclusion, or they came to a realization that, so blacks will never vote for the Democratic Alliance. What needs to be done? Because they plan ahead. They always plan ahead. So, and they also said that we've got President Ramaphosa. We gave him all these shares, but sometimes he vacillates, on the Palestinian issue and so on. So what do we need to do? So they've managed to infiltrate the ANC, which is one thing. But as I said, the ANC is a big giant. We can say what we say. Whether it's facing an existential crisis or not, it has been a necessary irritation to whiteness, because it has not considered to all of its demands. So you've got the ANC. So now, all these families, they've realized that, no, we can no longer depend on this ANC. And Ramaphosa's term is coming to an end. What needs to be done? We don't have the money, Nziki, to fund political parties. Individually, we might not have, in fact, but collectively, if we understood the power that is in politics, because unfortunately we are stuck with this politics. If we came together and said that we are going to fund that political party, we identify political parties which are progressive, which are pro-black, which are pro-working class, which are pro a common cause, and pro true reconciliation, where whites apologize, then things will change for the better. We're not prepared to put our money so that we are able to change, one, the narrative, and two, the future and vision of this country. And then we blame these Oppenheimers, because what they are just doing, they are protecting their own interest. That's the only reason why they are funding Rise Mzansi. They're funding Rise Mzansi not because they believe that Songezo will distribute wealth to the majority of our people. They're not doing that. They have not funded Musi Maimane and others. And the reason why they can fund or they can start engaging your Gayton McKenzie is because they know that despite Gayton's history, and by the way, Gayton has always been radical. They are speaking to Gayton because he started speaking of undocumented migrants or undocumented foreigners. Because when we start speaking about Africans or when we start identifying Africans as the problem, you leave the economy alone. I've been asking this question. As I said, 6.1 million South Africans and less than 3,500. So when we say they are taking our jobs, which jobs are those? Which jobs are those? It means they are taking the 3,500 jobs and less than that. It means as a people, as Africans in South Africa, that's what we see ourselves. We see ourselves as slave wage earners. We don't see ourselves as owners of the means of production. So they will give Gayton an audience because Gayton is attacking Africans. So now you are diverting the conversation from the real issues. And that's where they are beating us to this day. And that's why their governing party, the ANC, is in a problem. It's in a quagmire because it's diverted. They're fighting for money. 90% of the issues in the ANC is monies, Nosi Viwe and others. So they're beating us because we've never mobilized, organized, we're not disciplined. and we're not prepared to put money where we should. Because if we start being organized and we start saying that we want to build the institutions of the future, we start looking at the very babies, at the very, these kids. Where are we seeing these kids in the next 10 years or so? We don't do that. We don't even care. Where we are now, there are probably 3 informal settlements. Those people, many of them are subjected to, generational poverty. They will never live that environment. But many of us could not care. We are comfortable, we are individualistic. So that's the situation in South Africa, that when the continent sees us, they see a developed economy, they see opportunities. But at the same time, they've seen how we are Afro-pessimists, without realizing that Africans own banks. Africans, they own their land, but they are being destabilized by the West. So the best that we could be doing is saying, how do we collaborate? Because they own the means of production. We've got the institutions. And democracy, there's been, not everything has been downhill. So how do we collaborate with our fellow African brothers and sisters so that we are able to make Africa great again? We're not having this conversation. And this xenophobia, it's sponsored by white people. Why are they not, ask yourself, Nsiki, why are we not closing borders? I mean, governance or migration governance, it's a statutory issue in the entire continent. All the countries in the continent, they know that migration governance, it's a necessity. No country, because the borders are there, you can't take them away for now. So those countries ensure that they deal with their border issues. They ensure that people who come in are documented. Why are we not doing the same? We're not doing that because white capital, it survives on cheap labor. But at the same time, we want to be this cheap labor. We do not want to participate in the mainstream economy. So I think for me, these are conversations that we should be having. We're not having those conversations. That's why these political parties are giving us sound bites. They are telling us what they believe we need to hear. Because by virtue of being human, we are easily it's easy to manipulate us. So they are telling us what we need to hear. The DA is telling whites what they need to hear. The ANC is telling its constituency, which is mainly poor people, that will give you more social grants. We're not building more factories. We are not building more industries. We are not firing Enji Motshekwa. We are not firing Blade Nzimande. We're not taking out NSFAS. We are not re-educating our teachers. No, we'll give you more social grants. So and that is the sad part of our country. And we have left all these discussions to politicians. And you don't have to be a thinker, by the way, to be in parliament where you make decisions, where you enact laws on behalf of all of us. You can wake up tomorrow, become a politician, go to parliament, and make laws that you don't even understand. You sign for laws that you don't even understand. Yeah.
What do you mean? Because actually we have wondered how the laws come into place and what's actually going on in parliament. So what do you mean when you say that they are signing laws that they don't even understand? Where are they coming from? Where are the laws coming from?
Yes, where are the laws coming from? Who decides on the policies in this country?
Yes.
That's the question. Who decides on which policies the country should take? I mean, let's take FICA, the FICA bill that was signed by President Zuma. Today, a bank can unilaterally close your account. They can just say, Ntsiki, you are politically exposed, and they close your account. And you have, for example, other political parties, including the very ANC, which is affected by this FICA bill, that cannot even raise money because people are now scared to give money to the ANC because now they have to be exposed.
Sure, white people have sorted this thing out, huh?
No, white people are in control. So the FICA bill came with the banks. It's an international thing. It's an international banking thing. And I know that there were engagements with the Chinese because they said if you don't sign this law into place, it means that you are not part of the regulations, the international banking regulations. So, I mean, it's FICA. I mean, FICA is one thing. There's also CIDB Act that you need to be on level 1, 2, 3, and the highest, it's mainly left to white construction companies. Those are the people who are making more money from construction deals from the state. And then you have, I spoke of the CIDB, then you have MFMA, which shut down VBS. So, unfortunately, Ntsiki, you asked, who makes the laws? Or who decides on the laws? It's white people. Even BEE was conceptualized by Oppenheimer Brenhurst Foundation. The very BEE which is not working, it was conceptualized by Brenhurst Foundation. And President Mbeki at the time even thanked the Oppenheimer family for their contribution towards this BEE law, which at the time the commission was led by President Ramaphosa. So I think just to close this question that you asked, apologies, I was trying to understand how did South Africa become the first country in the world which put homosexual rights in the constitution. I discovered that it was part of the constitution in 1996. And the chair at the time who was responsible for the constitution was President Ramaphosa. And I asked myself, why would a country where the majority do not have land, they do not control the economy, they don't own nothing, why would they be given this civil liberty? And I think when you ask this question, you should understand who has the power to define. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with homosexuality, by the way. Mm-hmm. I could not bother on what people do in their private spaces. Mm-hmm. But why is it that those people who imposed this constitution on us could give black men the right to be sexual, but not to own the land? So I'm just saying these are small things that we do not think about. We think we are free. And we go on a daily basis, especially many of us, because I don't even know if I should still consider myself as a middle class. 13% of black people considered to be a real middle class in South Africa. And we still have this facade of an economy, this voodoo economy in Ntsiki. And as I said, we're not holding the white oligarchy accountable. They fund Corruption Watch, your Themba Maseko of this world. They fund Corruption Watch. They fund media monitoring. They literally fund everything. And why do they fund all these organizations? Because in Ntsiki, they won't fund you. They won't come here and say, Ntsiki, we want to fund you. If they do come, it's when they want to capture you.
Yeah.
So that you do not invite people like us and many people that you've invited to your studio. So that is the reality of South Africa, and I wish Africans who are listening, they are not impatient with us. That they also understand that we've been 30 years into this democracy. It's a young democracy. It's a democracy that is born in chains. And they need to come to South Africa and hold our hands because we really need help.
Sure. Thank you so much. I could talk to you for hours and hours. Thank you for bringing your brilliance once again and your insight. I'm hoping you're going to come again just before election so we can talk about what each political party brings. Actually, before we go, can you just give us a little what you think of each one? EFF, DA, Songezo's one, ATM.
Okay. EFF, I'm hoping that, there's clearly going to be a coalition government. If you look at the projections are quite evident. And if you look at the moonshot or the right-leaning parties that have come together, they are hoping that they will go into a coalition with the Ramaphosa ANC. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they're trying to push to ensure that some of the people within the ANC are isolated, if not, excluded and so on. Mm-hmm. So you have the DA. The DA in terms of its policies is very clear, anti-black, anti-poor, pro-corporations and the rich. Yeah. And you've got the EFF. I'm hoping to see more people from the EFF in Parliament. I hope to see Floyd Shivambu as the next minister.
President.
No, the next Minister of Finance, not president. Then you've got the ANC. We still need the ANC. I mean, I might have my own reservations, and genuinely so. But not the ANC of Ramaphosa. An ANC which will be
of the people,
pro-working class. You cannot have an economy which benefits the rich. It's just absurd, and we say nothing about it. Yes, so we still need the ANC in Parliament.
MK,
you need Jacob Zuma.
Okay,
he rattles the system. You need a person that the system is not comfortable with. So you surely need MK, and I don't know if MK can exist beyond President Zuma, but it's a necessary agent irritation. So it's critical that you have MK there, and then you would have your ATM. They've done great work. They've asked good questions because those in power must be held accountable. The ANC must not be angry or sensitive when they are asked questions. Yeah. Yes. They must critique and be critiqued. It's important. And then you have new other parties. I mean, in Northwest, I know that you've got Forum for Service Delivery. You also have Sun Party.
Annelem Dahl running independent as well.
Oh, yes, you've got Annelem Dahl. You also have Al Jama. So I think it's the third period of transition. 30 years. So the political landscape has obviously changed. So I think it's a necessary change. The ANC needs to be agitated. They've been too comfortable. They've made a lot of money from the state. It's now that they start thinking differently about politics. That amandla awethu means power to the people. Not your families, not yourselves. Amandla wabantu, matla abatu.
Samaku. Enkosi Phaphano, thank you so much for all your time and your wisdom. There you have it, guys. Yeah. That's all I can say. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for continuing to support, and please do like, share, and subscribe.
Who are you when all you were has been diluted by lies and white lines cancelling out all that which has been written of your history? Why do you look at yourself as a mystery? Doesn't the sun shine because you open your eyes? Doesn't the moon stay situated within the same stars your DNA sparkles off? Your spirit knows that surely corner into e off. Buza umoya so you may return to being well off. Because spiritually you are rich, yet your ancestors cry because you are out of reach. But yours is to command all elements while God takes inspiration from the very mirror she looked at to become. Remember who you are and never finish just when they think that with you they are done.